That's right. Good afternoon. I'd like to call, I'm staying informed, just barely informed here, with the three of us here, three voting members, and welcome to our legislative representatives attending today. Would like to call the meeting to order, and would like to note the compliance with the open door law. This meeting is being held in compliance with that, along with all its required notices. First, the order of business today is the approval of the minutes of the May 13th public meeting, which were previously distributed. Are there any corrections or clarifications needed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the May 13th minutes?
I would make a motion to approve the May 13 minutes.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, where are you guys now? Probably. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The meeting minutes are adopted. We'll move right into our public comment section. And first, I think we'll go through folks that are coming in remotely here. So first, let's turn ourselves to Dr. McLeod. We will unmute you and turn the airwaves over to you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Good afternoon to all of you, the Distress Unit Appeal Board. I see Dr. Vernon Smith, our state representative. Good afternoon to you too, Dr. Smith, Pete Miller, and all those that are there. I'm Dr. Vanessa Allen McLeod, President and CEO of the Urban League of Northwest Indiana, and I also serve on the Gary Community School Corporation Board. I am pleased that the district has come to this point of being returned to local control. This is a historic accomplishment, and many people have worked very hard to make sure that our finances are in the black and we're on the road to a new adventure for students. I'm sure you are aware that we've approved Dr. Yvonne Stokes as the new superintendent for the Gary Community School Corporation. With that said, there are many parents, community, business leaders, faith-based partners, and the community at large who support our school district and look forward to collaboratively working together to move forward the district for the benefit of educating our students to reach their full potential. It takes you, it takes me, it takes all of us. And I believe we have really pledged our support to make a difference in the lives of students. This has been a long time coming, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday, I believe, for the public meeting. So thank you for this opportunity to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. McLeod. Next, I think we had, is Christy Sass, one of the persons. Okay. Christy Sass, can you hear us? And would you like to speak today?
Hello?
Hello? Yes, Christy?
Yes, hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So last summer I came down to Springfield one time and, oh, first I want to say thank you to the DUAB people. This has been a lot of work on your part over the years and I do appreciate it. Last year I came and talked about the science of reading and that podcast called Sold a Story that I thought everybody should read. And I held up a couple of books and said, there's different ways to teach reading and I'm going to try this and see if it works. So it occurred to me yesterday that I should tell you the progress because I did volunteer at one of the grade schools 4 mornings a week and used a science of reading speech to print program called EBLI. And I got some test scores from their iReady. iReady, yeah. So the 4th and 5th graders did the best. The 4th grader, I'm looking at her scores. When I met her in March a year ago, she could barely read at all. The beginning of this year, she was first grade, and at the end of this year, she's up at second grade. She doubled her typical annual progress and almost made it to her stretch goal. I got a fifth grader here who went from early second grade to third grade. She got 130% of normal progress. A girl here who I first met in March of last year who also could barely read at all. She got 212% of normal progress and almost to her stretch goal. Another fifth grade boy, this one's amazing. He started off as a first grade level. He's now up to fourth grade. He got 573% of the normal progress, and he did 244% of his stretch. And another boy that I met in March of the year before, he went from first grade level the beginning of this year to early fifth grade level. So he's just about on grade level. He made 492% of typical growth, and he did 200% of his stretch growth. The third graders didn't test quite as well, but the third grade teachers would tell you that there's two boys in particular that are success stories. And they went from, not being able to read The Cat in the Hat to being able to read Magic Treehouse, which is still not third grade level, but way better than it was. So anyway, I don't know if you'll ever have anything to do with education again, but just so you knew that it works, and I'm happy to be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment to her?
You may.
Okay. I just want to commend you for making a difference. One of my mentors is Bob Kennedy. He's gone on, but I still study his word. And one of the things he said that every individual can make a difference, and every individual has the obligation to make the world a better place to live. And you certainly have done it. I just want to applaud you for what you've done. You've made a difference. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed it at least as much as they did.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, Attorney Tracy Coleman, please. You do.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed, Attorney Coleman.
I would like to quote Dr. Razor from the October 24, 2023 board meeting. And to quote him, he said, "And as I talked about last time, one oops, one unexpected thing, and the district goes in red." I'm very thankful that our community is on the verge of coming out of takeover, but I don't want it to be a situation that Dr. Razor and MGT gets the community to hold the bag on a financial system that could possibly be one oops away from collapse. And because of that, it is very crucial that our community has a forensic audit, and we have an audit that is accessible, follows generally accepted accounting principles, that's published on the school website, where we can see what is left in every fund balance, that we can see what has been done and what hasn't been done. Because Dr. McNulty, Chief Financial Officer Wolverton, and Chief Academic Officer Kimberly Bradley all left at the same time. Some of the representations that were made that the HVAC system was fixed, that this is working, obviously was not correct. Because if it had been correct, we would not be seeing these invoices where McCullough, you need about 254,000 just to deal with the controls. So how does an emergency manager get to tell DUAB that the HVAC is fixed, and now taxpayers are left to pay for control systems, HVAC systems, because obviously it was not done. And because of that, DUAB has a fiduciary duty to see what broke down in the system that the school district now has to pay twice. And I would ask that DUAB have MGT and Dr. Razor, before they exit, verify every penny in every account. Because when we look at the previous audits where it gave a qualified opinion, a disclaimer opinion on child nutrition, there was even an audit that said $5 million was put in a wrong account. The reality is, if you have $5 million in a wrong account, how can you show a surplus in food service? And I doubt if our current superintendent and the board was at the face of these audits, that people would just look the other way and act like everything is okay. The fact is, we love our children. With children, you're going to have an extreme investment of time and money. So it's very crucial that our new superintendent and the board forgive the debt, make sure the money is right, and start them in a financial footing where they don't have to pay for the mistakes of others and they could focus on helping our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Attorney Coleman. Mrs. Tyndall?
Good afternoon to all of you, both here and listening there. Amen, Tracy Coleman. And you're right on target, of course, as usual. And I hope the board hears you and will respond accordingly. DUAB and all of us present, I'm Mrs. Loretta Kendall, a 1966 honor graduate of the historically profound and architecturally renowned high quality and equitable learning institution, Theodore Roosevelt High School of the great city of Gary, Indiana. We will all agree that numbers count, and Mr. Johnston, I have watched your interaction and your body language as numbers are given to you during the meetings in the past, and you seem to be very impressed by numbers. And this board has stated that one of their key focus has been finances. I say to you that other numbers count as well. What are the numbers of the 2024 graduates? What are the numbers of the core 40 students? What are the names of those who ranked award N2 in Westside Leadership Academy? What are the numbers of the certificates of attendance that were issued? What were the certificates of participation? What are the numbers of special needs students in our Gary school system? And how were their needs addressed? What are the numbers of the IEP students? What are the numbers of the swimming pools that are functional in our Gary school system? What are the number of times that Westside roof was repaired since 2017, repaired and paid? What is the number of times that Westside roof was replaced since 2017? What is the number of student walkouts? What is the number of principals in 6 years? I think 6 is the number, and I want to know why there have been so many changes. What is the number of students who've been unlawfully rejected from the school system? We have a particular student that spoke at the last school board meeting, Anthony Boyd, stated that he was unlawfully, along with his guardian, stated that he was unlawfully suspended from school and prevented from graduating this past June. What is the number that I want you to pay particular attention to regarding expulsions? I see 33-20-8-19. Again, I see, letter I, letter C, Indiana Code, 33-20-8-19. I would ask you to read and make sure our schools and our students are following the law. What's the number of students expelled with a letter and with a hearing? And what is the number of students who were told Thursday, May 30th, 2024, that they would not be allowed to participate in graduation exercise on Sunday, June 2nd, 2024. Yes, they had a capital guide, but they were not allowed to march. And how many parents, concerned citizens, and guardians are waiting for responses to letters that they've given to Mr. Razor? Thank you so much.
Yes. Dr. Spangenberg?
He's not here.
Okay. Is there anyone else online or in person that would like to speak? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move into our updates. We have the usual academic, financial, and operations update. Mavis, you want to kick things off?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to close out the school year, I'll share attendance and suspensions updates as I have been every month, since January, I believe. And then, of course, the iLearn test and the iRead tests are complete, but that data is still embargoed, so we can't share that yet. But we can share our iReady data, which is kind of our diagnostic that we look at, beginning, middle, and end of year. So, won't spend too much time on some of these numbers that we've looked at a lot in the past. You can see how our attendance finished out. Actually a little bit higher in our last month of May, the west side, which was, I think, students, lots of fun activities at the end of the year wanting to finish out and make sure they graduate. A little bit of a dip at our middle schools, I think outside of the high school, particularly in those last couple of weeks. We went for a week after Memorial Day and we kind of see lower attendance on those days especially. You'll see a similar pattern in the elementaries, but pretty similar to the other spring months overall in terms of attendance. When we look at suspensions, I went ahead and just polled. We've been looking at kind of the last 2 years and then month by month so that we could see, how things were changing over the course of the school year. Since the school year is over, I went ahead and just compiled it into kind of this year, previous year, and the year before. You'll see that our secondary schools are seeing increases in suspensions, unfortunately. I think there are a few drivers of this. One is instability in the teaching force. So unfortunately, particularly in our secondary school, we have a number of teachers on emergency permits who are not as thoroughly trained in things like behavior management, de-escalation, supporting students who have experienced trauma. We also have, and this is a nationwide trend, increasing numbers of call-offs from teachers. And when there are substitutes in rooms and you hit kind of that critical mass, things will more rapidly escalate in terms of behavior, and students are having less consistent exposure to the classroom teacher, which becomes an issue for culture and climate overall. We have doing a couple of things to address this right now, and of course it's something we actually have a meeting on Monday with all of the administrators, and we'll discuss with Dr. Stokes how she wants to handle it. We have planned next week 2 full-day professional development sessions for teachers on social emotional learning and supporting students who have experienced trauma and behavior management specifically. We are planning to do kind of a revisit of some of those topics at the beginning of the school year, both for our new teachers specifically, and then for all staff, where we'll have them plan out a structured plan for routines and procedures. We're also creating more guidance for the very beginning of the school year for teachers, what to do with that first week and a half to help set the right tone. And then we've actually built out a department for at-risk students specifically. This will support with attendance as well, but the goal is ultimately to implement stronger processes and procedures to make sure that we're really supporting kids instead of letting things escalate to the point that it ends in suspension, which is not what anyone wants. You'll see at our elementary schools, we saw some good decreases at Banneker and Williams, which is great. Banneker has had a really stable teaching force. It's our smallest school as well, and so things just tend to be a little bit calmer, smaller class sizes, all those things help. We've also had the same administrative team in that building for I think 5 years, and a pretty stable group of teachers, and we don't have the same teacher attendance issues there, and so I think all those things contribute. At Williams, which is actually one of our bigger schools, Glen Park is our largest, but Williams is second largest in the elementary. They really implemented a lot of good MTSS structures to support students. In particular, we had an assistant principal there who's really wonderful at implementing MTSS. And so we're, want to learn from what worked in those two buildings and make sure we're supporting our other elementaries similarly heading into next year. But of course, this is a really one of our primary conversations with Dr. Stokes as we're heading into next year about how she wants to make sure that we're really addressing this proactively, because we don't want to see data that looks like this again. I'll pause. Questions?
You know I have one. Okay, what do you attribute to the difference between three of the schools where the numbers have gone down or either stayed the same, and these others that have increased?
Yeah.
And one looked like it almost tripled.
Yeah, I think I heard about that bridge. Is the
I mean, call that school, but I'm doing Parkway's almost tripled.
Yeah, so actually Glen Park, I will say, I believe there's a data issue there from previous years. So I think that this year's data, but I'm not, from what I understand, some of the data transfer over to our record keeping systems has not been perfect. So that's a terrible answer, but I do believe that's part of the increase in Glen Park. More to the point though, I think the schools where we're seeing those big increases are the ones where we've had trouble with staffing. And if you look, I do collect our teacher attendance rates to review them. It's where we have the lowest teacher attendance, which, when there's subs in the rooms and where kids aren't seeing their classroom teacher regularly, it really makes unfortunately, a negative difference.
I'm glad to see that you're looking at leadership and you're talking about the leadership at Williams School. When you saw the change before we turned it over to Dr. Stokes, why didn't we look at some of those kinds of things that we've done at Williams School and implement it this year rather than waiting for her to do it next year?
I mean, we have been having these conversations all year and looking at practices and what's working. So we've taken a lot of their MTSS structures and done some training district-wide to roll it out. But in terms of, I think especially with culture and climate, once you get past the first little stretch of the year, it's hard to really make that change. Students tend to really react to the initial structure that they're given at the beginning of the year. I think even at the classroom level, right? If we don't start the year with good procedures, it's hard to kind of adjust afterwards. So we have done that to some degree, but I think that reset of the new school year creates an opportunity to go a layer deeper than midstream.
I recognize just from talking with educators in the area that teachers' hands are pretty much tied as far as what they can do with the disruptive students in a building. What we once did, we can no longer do. And have we had any workshops on alternative ways of dealing with disciplinary problems short of suspending students? Because if they're not there, you can't teach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a correlation between the attendance and the academic sheet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you not have there, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Finch, but.
Yeah.
Oh,
You have any response or not?
yes. And I think, in addition to like the teacher attendance and stability issues, especially when we have teachers who are, and it's not only teachers on EPs, but I think it's more prevalent there. Knowing those techniques for de-escalation, recognizing what type of need a student is really expressing through their behavior and how to meet that need, those are advanced teacher skills. And so we are doing training on those. There's training on it next week. We've got some lined up for the start of the school year. But I totally agree with you. That's one of the root causes. And I do see teachers escalate when they can be de-escalating.
My last question, and I'll turn it over. Have you, in disaggregating the data, does this information that you showed here, the first time students who were suspended or the repeaters?
This is individual
Every
suspended.
time they have.
Yes, yeah, so many of
You
them.
haven't analyzed repeaters.
I have, yes. We've looked at that. We're gonna do kind of an end of year debrief on it next week, actually.
But you haven't done it in previous years, looked at the repeaters.
I can't speak to it.
If you don't get to the root of the problem, you're not solving.
Yeah, and there are many repeat offenders in this data for sure, and we do look at that internally.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
You talk a lot about probably the root cause of, not root cause, but one of the causes is substitute teachers, people that lack qualities to do it. Don't you find it's important that the school recognize that that's part of the factor and devise a separate program outside of that where you can have somebody in there, whether it be a social worker or somebody that can come in there to those kids and teach them what it's about going to school and, I mean, rationalize what's going on rather than suspend them and send them out. I mean, shouldn't there be a program? I mean, that suspension is not the first thing we go to. And isn't that your obligation though, since you're already recognizing the fact that you're part of the problem?
Suspension is not our the first thing that we go to by any means. We do have behavior specialists who are licensed clinical social workers in every building, as well as, partnership with Marian University called City Connects, where we have a coordinator who, they are mostly licensed social workers as well, so they'll do some counseling and then also connecting with external services. I do think that this data shows that our students are coming with needs that are outpacing the supports that we have. And it's something that we have created a department to address the at-risk populations and come up with a more strategic plan so we can make sure we are able to put supports in. But we do have some students who need significant mental health supports that the school system is not quite set up to provide at the level that the need is. So yeah, it's definitely a need that's not 100% met.
I mean, I've just seen it in other schools where they actually have, I mean, you're going, okay, you're gonna be suspended, but not really. You're gonna go over here to this alternative function within the school corporation, and this is where you get to go now, where you're gonna now deal with different kinds and levels of people. Maybe not the teacher that doesn't have that degree or know how to work with those, emotional kids or ones that have behavioral issues. But now you're gonna work over here with people that do have this specifics.
Yeah, we have an alternative program for the high school, but it's only funded through IDOE for high school students. For students with very extreme behavioral needs, sometimes we consider virtual to see if that's a better fit, but that's not a great fit for every student, depending on their home situation. And we do have, so before a student is suspended, a number of other interventions have to take place. Only exception would be if there's a violent incident, right, where it's a matter of safety that they need to be removed, but they would first be given some of those supports, time with the social worker, an in-school suspension where we have somebody who's trained to support them, provide some counseling, things like that. Only once they've kind of gone through all those interventions and the problem still is repeating, or if there's, a safety issue, that's when we get to suspension.
Okay, so you mentioned the creation of a department, is that the
So,
identification and trying to build the capacity to mitigate?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
We have a number of supports for students, but they're not quite coherent enough right now to meet every need. And I think working with a limited amount of people resources and time resources, we've got to make sure those systems are functioning really well. We have a proactive plan for who goes where and when, and how teachers support, how administrators support, how our support staff steps in. And so that's where we've added that at-risk student director of at-risk populations. And then she'll be kind of pulling together and leading a team of folks who do a lot of this work, the alternative school being one, the virtual academy being another, the team of social workers will work with her, truancy folks will work with her, so that we can hopefully stitch those together. There are many schools where having one behavior specialist is sufficient to meet the needs of the student body. And at our schools, we need a little bit more.
I have additional questions if you have no understanding.
Any other questions right now?
Okay, you've been presenting data on suspensions. Are you using expulsions at all in your buildings? And where's the data?
We do, track the expulsions. They're very few. It's a small enough N size that we don't want to share it because, when you're talking about fewer than 10 students, you don't want people guessing at who the students are who are expelled. But we do discuss internally. It's quite rare. We have a pretty small number of expulsions.
On your suspension form, do your administrators have to document that they've gone through all of the steps as part of the policy prior to?
Yes.
That's documented.
And
Could one of those be shared where the name of the students taken off there?
Yeah, I have a.
I'm interested in seeing. And the second thing, the next thing is, have you infused the parent and the courts into this scenario before suspension?
So, certainly on the attendance side of things, we work with the courts, as, you know, dictated by state law.
But you can also do it with behavior.
Yeah, I think it's an area that we could leverage more, and I think that's what that, director of at-risk populations, because she'll be over both, will be able to make sure that we're maximizing community resources. I think bringing in more parents and finding more strategic ways to really partner with parents rather than dictate to parents, which is often what it looks like, is another important piece of that puzzle that we can improve on.
There's an abundance of research to deal with this situation short of using corporal punishment.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think, and I'm not gonna try to be a shadow of Dr. Stokes, but I think that Gary has to do that. And the reason I said that is because it was prior to you coming, it was maybe just a year before. I had one of the students that came through my program at Ivy Northwest that wanted an assistant principal position. But Gary offered her the principal position, said that they wanted her to take that based on her interview. And she was right to do that. So we were able to work out a deal with Gary Schools that I would come and be her assistant principal, and I had to have authority for $1. So I worked a whole year for $1 as an assistant principal to support the principal. I was probably more of a principal, but I needed to support her. And the parents changed the year. I was a principal for 20 years. And the parents have changed. I don't want to throw any rocks towards Illinois, but the parents that come over from there, they are different. They are totally different. And it was eye-awakening for me that year of dealing with parents. And I think MGT created part of the problem also because you push parents out of school. Not only you, but prior chief people have done that.
Mhm.
And so we've got to infuse that, we got to fix that leak that's there. And I know your days are numbered, but I'm saying it, and I imagine Dr. Stokes is observing this meeting, I hope she is, that I'm feeding the information to her. Once again, I don't want to try to dictate or do anything with her, because I believe in her and that she's gonna make a difference. But I just think that there's some things that are so obvious that MGT missed for 7 years.
Any other questions before we move on to I read it? Davis?
Right. So iReady is the diagnostic tool that we use at the beginning, middle, and end of year. Students also can engage in self-directed lessons, so there's a personalized learning element of it too, but it's how we start to measure growth. So the way that it reports out is not so much like iLearn, where it's, you know, grade level proficiency and how close you are to it. It's about how much a student has grown and how they compare to what on grade level would look like. So I'm going to show proficiency band, well, not proficiency, grade level bands in reading and math, and sliced a few different ways. I'm also going to share a couple of metrics, which you actually heard Mrs. Sass reference as well, which are typical growth and stretch growth. The way that, I'm going to try to explain this, but ask questions if I don't do it well, because it's a little tricky. Each student, when they take the beginning of year diagnostic, is given, based on their performance, a goal. The typical growth goal is how a student is growing compared to others in their cohort nationally. And if they're meeting their typical growth goal, that means they're on pace to grow, you know, in the way that we would want them to kind of year over year. Stretch growth is basically the goal that's set that would allow them to catch up. So if they're well below grade level, if they're meeting their stretch growth goals year over year, that means that that gap is closing, and that they're ultimately on track to get to grade level. So if you look at the reading data, we've got beginning of year to end of year, so fall assessments to spring assessments. And you can see that we had a good number of students move from below grade level to, on or above grade level. Those, the blues are early on or mid and a high on, and then, descending from there. The median percent progress towards typical growth, which is the metrics that I-Ready uses, was 103%. That means that our students' progress towards their growth goal was, the median score was 103. So we had a lot of students who overshot their typical growth goals. And 51% of students met their typical growth goals. 26% of students met their stretch growth goals, meaning that they're on track to close those gaps. Now, we do always see, there's always some growth beginning to end of year, right? If there's instruction and kids are in school, we're gonna see some growth. So the other way that I like to look at it is end of year to end of year to see, we know we're growing kids during the year, but are we overall starting to move the needle? So we look at spring 23 compared to spring 24. That's on the next slide. And while I shared something similar around this time last year, and the data looks pretty similar in that last year and this year as well, we moved about 6% of students, additional students were on grade level at the end of the year. So would love to see more growth, of course. I never want to pretend like that's sufficient or, you know, where we can stop and call it, but excited to see year over year that we are ending the year with more students on grade level and we're, you know, trending in the right direction. The next slide shows that broken down.
Well,
Yeah.
remember what grade levels this is.
Oh, 3 through 8.
So it's gonna be not all the same cohorts because some of these eighth graders will be out.
Yes.
One third
Yeah.
is back.
Yes, that's true. So really looking at teacher impact there and what's going on in the classroom, you're right, the student body does vary, and of course that makes a difference as well. And then just so you can see school by school where we are. Again, this is still reading, and you can see beginning of year to end of year, how that growth looked throughout the year. Lots of the most growth at Banneker, but good jumps in a lot of the areas of reading.
Have you gotten feedback from, Reed? I know it's taken one at the end of the year, so have you gotten that data?
So there's 2 administrations of I read free, is that what you're?
Yeah.
They take it in March, and then students are given an opportunity to retest at the end of the year. We do have that data, but it's still in bond, so I'm not able to share it.
The reason I ask the question is because when you come in the past and shared all the good news about, I read it, and then when we give the test, we find out, what was it? 7 out of every 100 students passed the test. And for math, I'm over, what was it? I learned.
Yeah. Yes, they all sound like it's the same too.
I learned,
Yeah,
then, only 4, no,
it was about
it was 3
3.8.
out of every 100
Yeah.
X.
Yeah,
So, you know, and you got bonuses for what you did for our grading, but it didn't materialize into what was real, which is the actual test.
so don't take what I'm saying the wrong way. I think the key slide here is a couple back. If you want to go to the spring to spring. To me, if we expect to see anything correlate to iLearn, it would be the amount of growth year over year here. Because I think you're right, we always will see some beginning of year to end of year growth if they're coming to school, right, and growing and aging and developing. And I know that has been taken the wrong way in the past. I-Ready scores do not directly correlate to iLearn because it is intended to be a measure of growth, so it's computer adapted, right? The students begin taking the assessment, and if they're doing poorly, it goes down to their grade level. So the goal is to get a sense of where they are. iLearn just tests at grade level, so it's really difficult to correlate. One thing we're excited about heading into next year is the iLearn checkpoints assessments, and I don't know, which is gonna allow us to really see throughout the year how students are doing on that grade level bar. I'm excited about teachers getting the opportunity to dig into that grade level data, because I do think there's a risk of looking at the iReady data and saying, oh, it looks so sunny and good. I think the way iReady compiles the data also, with the typical.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello. I'm good.
So I agree with you. I'm not trying to say more than kind of the growth that we see here year over year. I'm hoping to see similar incremental increase in iLearn, but the beginning of year to end of year, I agree, iLearn does not correlate perfectly with.
I'm pleased to see that they're gonna start a year ahead of time. I'm pleased to see that they're gonna do incremental testing. But I'm really concerned, you know, that research and testing is not an end in itself, so it means to me. As I said to the Secretary of Education, here in answer me to my satisfaction, I think that matters. But they have not come up with what they're going to do to make a difference once they get the data between each testing session. And that's imperative.
Absolutely.
That's where the rubber takes the rubber. So I would hope that if you transition, you say that, because I think Dr. Stokes, although she's been in this, in Indiana, she probably has knowledge of it already.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be driven home. That's where the work is.
Absolutely.
It's just to restate this point, with no confusion, because a couple years ago, we did have this confusion, and it was similar. The focus of this test is on growth,
Yes.
and, you know, we've demonstrated that. But we should interpret, like on this slide, end of year 24, 19% are middle above grade level, some are mid.
Yeah.
Some are above, and so, that doesn't mean that's gonna translate to a 19% passing on either. Like, pretty much.
But I think it's imperative, and I've said this to the state, if you got a testing program that's supposed to prepare you, it has to be correlated with the test. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. I mean, come on. And evidently, it's not well correlated, even correlated, even though they say it is.
Yeah, the companies do all things to be correlated, which is why I think the checkpoints will be a step in the right direction, but thank you for the point about what we do between the checkpoints is key, and I 100% agree. So the next set of slides just shows that same data broken down the same way for math as with the data that we've shared historically. Similar trends, but lower achievement for math. So you can see kind of similar amounts of growth year over year, or within the year, similar year over year, a few points gained in math, from spring 2023 to spring 2024.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then at the school level, again, very similar trends, just lower achievement wise. We are, you know, it's tricky because we want to focus on literacy. We know that literacy is key, and we've made a really intentional push on literacy this year. But we also hate to see math data like this. We are doing a couple of things heading into next year to ensure that there's some attention paid to math. One is compartmentalizing our elementary classrooms starting at 3rd grade. We had some instructional coaches in previous years. In this coming year, we're really focusing on content expertise. So we've got our literacy coaches, and then we've got a couple of math specific coaches, so that the folks who are teaching math are focused on math instead of feeling like they're split between the two and kind of don't know where to put their attention. I think that'll allow us to streamline professional development of those teachers as well. We work with an expert from Butler University to support all of our math programming. He's been working with those coaches already, and what we're going to be doing next year. So do have some supports in place on the math plan as well.
I'm glad to see you doing that, because I think it's key. Everybody can't teach them.
Yeah,
They don't even understand.
it's true. I thought math.
Look at some. Well, explain this. The typical median progress was 88%, and this other slide says it was 140. Oh, at daily it was 140.
Yes, yeah, that was the highest, good, the highest, yeah.
Any other questions on the iReady slide? Thank you, Mavis. Let's move into the financial update.
Sure, greetings. And just, I want to delineate something because I caught myself doing math on my paper here in a second. We share two pieces of data here. What we're sharing is the 2024 fund balance, knowing that we use a January to December budget year. As we report to DUAB, we also share school year data. So you can see that right now we are projecting that we end this, or we go into next school year running a $6.7 million surplus for the next school year. However, for this fiscal year, we estimate that we are going to run an $8.4 million surplus as things stand now. And we're operating then with leaving the district with $27 million in the savings account, if you will, as an operational cash reserve. Those numbers might change a bit as we have other projects that we're able to fund now and still leave the district in good shape. And we'll talk about some of those. But if we look through the various funds, and a spoiler, we'll talk a little bit later about policies. It's going to be a policy of the new school board that they get a monthly report like this from the administration, showing the funds, showing the major expenses. Education fund showed a bit of a spike in May because it was a 3 payroll month. And every once in a while you have months that fall that way. So nothing untypical there. Operations stayed fairly stable as well as we move through, as we get close to halfway through the year. And one thing I also want to point out as well is we've set our budgets for the year based on our original fall enrollment. Our enrollment increased in January, in our February count, but we've not upped the amounts we said we were going to spend. We have the cushion if we need it, but we're living within the budget that we set for ourselves. There was no debt service payments in May, and then referendum, we took the withdrawal as we always do. And of course, on Monday night, we'll go into a lot more detail on some of these things as we walk through the metrics. But a spoiler for that, we are going to run a surplus above what is set forth for us. We're going to model 5 years of financial health where the district will be able to make either we'll run at a surplus or have an adequate reserve to cover things. And then we are also going to leave the district with a very, very healthy operational cash reserve.
Go back to your point, though, on the education fund slide on the budget is, we're still reflecting 37.9, but the additional ABM actually shows up on line 17, the benefits of the additional ABM
Yes.
shows up too on that table, slide 17. Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you're saying? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any questions on the funds?
Tracy Coleman, attorney Tracy Coleman asked a question about the monies that came from federal dollars not being spent. And I think she said that there being expenses are being left for the district. Is that the case? Or maybe I didn't understand it. That's what I thought she said.
I'm not sure what she was referring to, but we were given the ability earlier in the school year to fund reconciliation. We had, some of our funds had negative balances, some had positive, way more than they should have. And we were given the ability to go in and reconcile our checkbook, basically, and did that. So right now, funds are being expended out of the correct funds, and everything has been taken care of as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, if that was the question that she was asking.
Is MGT receptive to the audit?
The school district gets regularly audited, and we have to turn over all of the numbers and books, and those will be looked at as we leave as well.
Then when she talks about forensic audit, how's that different from what the state does?
Mr. Joyce?
Honestly, it's gonna be a waste of the money for Gary Community School Corporation, is what it's gonna be. But it's not for this board, mate.
Could you explain to me and the public what's the difference?
Well, an
between what
audit
the
is
state-
gonna look at all those numbers that they have and where the money was spent.
I mean, that's the state audit.
This is the one I perform, my
Yeah,
office.
right, right.
Yes,
Okay.
The forensic audit itself is looking for malfeasance, misfeasance, or non-feasance within a specific fund.
But you would note that anyway, right?
If we noted that it did occur and we have not noticed any malfeasance, misfeasance, or non-feasance within the funds being spent there. Are the public getting a full 100% accountability of every single transaction that occurred? I don't know whether they are not. An audit's not gonna give you 100% look at every single dollar spent. And audits always go by something based on samples, which has statistically been proved by all means of mathematical statisticians accurate. And, you know, it's been done each year. One of the comments, $5 million was maybe put into the wrong fund. That would be identified within a finding, but during the audit, they're going to make those correcting errors and they're going to make those funds proper at the end of the time frame. If money was misspent, it specifically cost during federal funds. If there was the oversight agencies would then get involved, and that would be whether it be the U.S. Department of Education or whoever that grantor agency was. In this case, they are not getting involved because the funds themselves ultimately were spent for what they should have been spent for. Can the new board order that? That would be 100% within their realm if they wanted to look at it specifically, if they wanted to go look at, say, the money spent on the roof projects. It would be an expensive venture. It probably would take 6 months for somebody to come in and do that kind of work. Probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. But as far as a financial statement audit of the numbers that they do, the numbers that the school spends, that gets done every year.
Okay.
Any other questions on the financial update? Okay,
And then operationally, we just have 4 policies that the new board will adopt. One is monthly budgets versus financial, which is what we give you. Biannual 5-year forecast, also given after the ADM, where the district will know 5 years down the road what things are looking like. Every year, the capital plan that I presented to you will be updated as well, with 5 more years and reprioritization. And then finally, a vacancy report, so they know what the staffing of the schools are like and what things are, or what positions will need to be filled.
Has the board at their learning sessions, have they had exposure to some of these financials?
Yes, they've had exposure to the financials, and then we are also looking to hold a board retreat the last week of January.
Okay.
Well, with Dr. Stokes, and just as an aside, I've met several times with Dr. Stokes and I'm making her aware of the state of the district, and that session will also be a really transparent session for us to meet with the board and the superintendent and share our findings and what things that we also recommend doing down the road.
And maybe Representative Thompson can aid with this as well, but with the bill that was passed, and I revisited it in their past, aren't some of those board members supposed to come off and who are they? I mean, what was the term? I know someone's supposed to be a phased-in situation where there's going to be a change. Do you remember Representative Thompson? I think it was 2 of them.
Was it with regard to when they're reappointed?
Right.
I think we staggered that.
I know, but when's the first
So
change coming in?
I don't remember, 2 or 3 were 1 year and 2 or 3 were.
Yeah, the 1 year, people asked me that.
Some of those were going to expire, I believe, the city, would be up for renewal, and then 2 out of the state appointments would be up for
Yeah,
renewal.
that question was asked to me yesterday, at the reception? That question was asked to me.
I believe the appointed bodies are planning to reappoint the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
It wasn't yesterday, the day before it was.
we'll move on to some expenditure authorizations that have been delegated to the executive director. Pete, you want to cover those?
So there's two purchases that I heard last month that should be in your packet. One was, install some security vestibules at West Side. In past months and years, we've approved some design work for that, for district wide. And so then we'll find it's for those. And these would be two entrances at West Side Ocean Academy. Total for those was $204,505. Paid for out of the operations fund. And then the other statute also requires if there's any additional positions added on the workshop, that those need to be approved by DUAB, and that includes summer interns. And so it had some of those for the summer. You may recall last time we talked about some inventory software. And so right off the bat, those interns are going to be helping to inventory textbooks over the summer. And then also rehabbing Chromebooks and getting those ready for the new school year. And the hourly rate for these employees is $15 per hour, also paid out of the operations fund.
Question.
Yes, sir. My recall, there are about 4 entrances that you get into West Side. Which school do you use for students, and is this applicable to us too?
This is this is the front door the kids come in. We're creating an airlock system, and when guests come into the building too, where people can't open the front door freely. And it's best practice now in school.
So what is the other?
The other
I can imagine the other.
The other's going to be the surge. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll move on to some contracts that require our attention. And Mike, you want to give us the overview on construction?
Yeah, so the first contract will be for the demolition and rehabbing of the grounds of the Norton Elementary site. Just do want to point out that I have real problems spending money for children on vacant buildings, just personally, but this is needed in the city of Gary. It's a safety issue, it's a liability issue, and and a lot of these older vacant buildings have just become blights on their community. However, the money from this will say it's coming from the operations fund because that is where it's coming from. But the way we are paying for this is, if you recall, we received an over $500,000 pilot payment from the city of Gary that had been 10 years worth of payments we were supposed to be receiving that Mayor Melton made happen not long after taking office, as well as from the sale of the Lincoln Duncan buildings, we received $250,000. So the combination of those two deposits will cover this demolition.
Very good.
May I ask you, who did the cleanup around Norton School? It looks much better.
And the cleanup would have been our team.
That was your team?
Yes.
I didn't know if the city did it or we did.
Yeah.
It looks much better already. Thank you.
We'll take these individually. So for the lead construction services, the Norton demolition, is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the construction contract amount $734,710.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Lead construction services contract is approved. Let's move on to the restroom upgrades at West Side Leadership Academy.
Sure. Our initial bid came in quite high, about double our estimate. So we're going to phase the project because it's something that's very necessary and prioritize the student bathrooms. And then phase 2 that will have to be approved then by the school board after we bid that out would be the locker rooms. And we are going to take care of the adult restrooms in-house with our maintenance staff. There's about 3 or 4 adult restrooms in the building that we have the capacity to handle that. So we will begin that immediately if approved.
Not sure. I've got, that was like $1.5 million.
Yes, $1 million for it's.
Yes.
Very last page.
Oh, one page back. Okay. There it is. There's the second.
Mr. Chairman, did we spend money on improvements of the bathroom to
prior to this? I know we spent some money on that.
I can answer
I
that.
don't recall, but I'll turn it to.
We adjusted the 1065 plan to align to spend money on the bathrooms, so that the plan to get the bids were approved. And now we've gotten the bids.
In January, we talked about adding some budget, but now we have an actual contractor who. But I don't think we've spent the past year.
No.
We just renovate all of the student bathrooms.
All the student bathrooms, yes.
Found it, it's that single page.
I do think that-
I was looking for one too.
Sorry, I found it.
Is in.
I saw it before in the material.
Us behind it.
Back, page of that.
Good Gary contractor, Garrett Construction. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
I move that we approve the contract for Gary Construction in the amount of $1,426,950.
I was saying.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That contract is approved. Very much. We'll move on to, we talked about this, I think, at the last month on some of the excess fund transfers. And Pete, you want to give us an overview of what we received in the last month?
I gave the board, again, the April memo from DOE, which listed 9 schools that were either above the 15% threshold or data was unavailable. So last month we had 5 responses. This month we have 3. And so we're acknowledging that publicly that they've been received. Then there's 1 more we're waiting on that they'll have until beginning of July to respond. Repeat my spiel from last month, there's nothing to vote on here. This is more advising consent to DOE. Although there's a reason it comes before this board for our fiscal indicators process, so we may choose to incorporate some of what we have here there. But the 3 responses we've received were from Mishawaka, Elwood, and Rochester. And so I'll just give you just a little overview of what their response was, and if the board wants to provide any additional comments to feedback to DOE, we could do that. So Mishawaka's percentage was 18.42. And they attributed that to multiple factors, one being declining enrollment, circuit breaker. They've got some energy savings bonds that are causing some debt service payments. And then just simply they've got old buildings that require a bit more upkeep and expenses from the operations fund. And interesting, they have a referendum, but it's used for education. So that isn't going to help with their percentage and the technology as well. But I just wondered if they had a referendum that went for operations, maybe they would be over 15. I'd have to look closer to do the math on that. Elwood was at 19.5%. They attribute that primarily to circuit breaker as well. The difference being that they had tried a referendum passed and it's failed. They indicated they would continue trying and are looking at a number of things, but were around question their ability to do so just because of the circuit breaker. You've got all the details in your packet, but both Mishawaka and Elwood, their circuit breaker is over 50%. And so it's, I do want to be sympathetic to the situation where you have other governments that impact that. But debt also impacts that. So when you talk about their interest ratings, that kind of hinders things. And my other soapbox comment is when we talk about like a circuit breaker loss, it's not loss. It's not like there's money sitting out there and then blocked by something like it. It is just part of the calculation. So we should probably find a different terminology for that, which is obviously protecting taxpayers. So. And then the last one is Rochester. They had a business manager that was on FMLA, so they didn't have the Form 9 available for December now that's calculated. They were only at 2.46%. I had to chuckle because of this manager was out. They were unable to make the transfers that they usually do. So normally would be higher than 2, but we're lower on the list because of that as well, but no concerns about it.
Just like to reiterate that, going through this process, really just, it throws them into our more formal, I mean, they're part of the fiscal indicators review that you and Atlantis do, but, because of this, it carries its own sort of, I don't want to say category, but we take a look at these as they come in. So it'll be part of the process that is undertaken over the next month or so as far as evaluating the overall fiscal indicators for the school corporations in the state.
So as far as the process which DOE administers and we assist with, there's no hard and fast rule, 50%, but the legislature has indicated we can support should be spent in the classroom. So this is the way to keep it now.
Mr. Chairman, does Atlantis get any complaints about the 80 cents causing this to happen? I'm just curious, any complaints?
I'm sorry, the 80 cents.
The 80 cent threshold when you shall go to a referendum, does that ever come up in discussions? Because as we know, certain communities were using the above 80 cents to actually supplement the operations fund. And I'm just curious, any complaints?
Not as it relates to the access transfer.
Okay, but you can, I guess, minimize those transfers by bonding over here, as you know how that all works. Yeah, okay, I'm just curious, thank you.
Is there any new business to come before the Distress Unit Appeal Board today? Well, we'd like to just reiterate what Dr. McLeod had mentioned as she kicked off her remarks. There is a public hearing at 5 p.m. Gary time at the Gary Career Center. The topic will be the review of the financial status and consideration of moving Gary Community School Corporation out of distress status. So I look forward to having that meeting at the Gary Career Center and seeing you all there.
One comment, praise God.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Well, we'll still have the meeting.
I know.
Okay. See you there. Or see you here.
If there's no other business today, we stand adjourned. Thank you.